What's up, y'all? This is the JP Dinnell YouTube exclusive Q&A session. I am
baby.
JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. What's up, buddy?
Hey. Hi, friends.
Why does that bother me?
I don't know, but
actually,
I love that
it doesn't bother me.
It's just that little thing
funny.
that throws you off. You
know,
know why?
It's today. It's just today.
Yeah.
Normally, I don't care, but
it always at least gets a look of like, who am I in the room with? Why did I do this? You know what it reminds me, or what kind of started it was Mike Mitchell. But then I recently, his goofy. But then when I was listening back to your most recent episode with Jocko, Jocko's like, "Good evening, JP." I'm like, yo. Like, you know what? This sort of fits the tenor of the personality of the show. So
that's amazing. I love it.
That's awesome. You ready to do some Q's,
what do you got?
Q's and A's? So we've got a bunch of questions here about Echelon Front and the stuff from Task Unit Bruiser, and I want to wait for our next Q&A to get to those.
Let's go.
Because I want that to be like just about that.
Just that. Cool.
So this is a question from a friend of mine named Aaron.
Okay.
Aaron's company hired another group of consultants.
Cool.
That are former Navy SEALs.
Okay.
And he's struggling because he knows that you and I work together.
Yeah.
And so his question to me was, after he told me a little bit about their company, and obviously I'm not going to mention it, but he said, you know, they're implementing all of these Navy SEAL principles and things. He goes, they just don't translate to what we do. He goes, as a matter of fact, a lot of our guys came out of that meeting laughing at the guy who is a retired Navy SEAL and is the instructor, because the principles that he gave us have no application at all to what we're doing.
I wonder what he's teaching, because it doesn't matter.
Right. So he says...
I wonder if this guy is actually a former Navy SEAL or if it's a fake.
Don't know. Right?
Okay.
And anyway, he goes, you know, because it's all about like finding your personal... like leadership style and all this kind of stuff. It's a weird deal. But he goes, you know, he's like, I know you work with JP a lot. How, he goes, because my perspective, and this is where the crux of the question is, he goes, from my perspective, nothing that guy said to me today, or that we learned in this leadership thing, translates to our business. Why is it that I should read Extreme Ownership or do any of the stuff that we're trying to implement at the church? It's like, because from what I experienced today, there is nothing that translates from being a Navy SEAL in combat to leadership at all. He's like, what makes Echelon Front? What makes Extreme Ownership? What makes that framework different?
Well, it's a fair question.
Right? Yeah.
And that's unfortunate that he feels that way.
I think that was kind of the way that I felt at the beginning.
The first thing I would ask him is your ego involved in this?
It's a fair question.
Is his ego causing him to not find the connections himself?
Yeah.
Just something to think about. Like, just start there and ask yourself that. Could the presentation of the material have been not done in a proper professional manner that caused him to have prejudgments about the actual message?
Yeah.
So you can say the right thing wrongly.
Oh, yeah.
And then that will shut people off. So that's the first thing I would say. Just if he was asking me this question and we were sitting and he was like, well, I would just ask him, like, well, let's do an honest self-assessment and just ask yourself, could your ego be involved now? Yes or no? And that's for him to answer.
Right. When you ask that question, what's the typical answer?
Yes.
Okay. See,
honestly, because most people, and because it's how we also ask it. It's a very non-attacking manner.
Right.
Like, I don't care, honestly, what your answer is. Right. It's just, I want you just to think about it. Could your ego be involved here? Most of the time people say, yeah. Because they think about, well, I didn't like the way that guy was dressed, or I didn't like how he was dropping F-bombs the whole time, or I didn't like how he talked about war the whole time and he just said he was like the baddest. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if somebody's like that, I'm gonna be going,
show me some credentials.
I'm gonna have a hard time.
Right. Yeah.
And guess why I have a hard time with it? Because my ego's involved.
Right.
So that's the only thing I say is like, just ask yourself, just put yourself in check. And if you can really say, okay, well, yeah, maybe it was part of my ego, but man, I just really still can't find the connections. Okay. That's fair. These things are hard to understand because our ego gets in the way. So it wasn't this major ego problem, but our ego gets in the way of us actually understanding, like, okay, how do these things connect the dots to what I have going on?
Yeah.
And then I would just say, if he's probably, you said, hey, why should I read Extreme Ownership or listen to the audio version? I mean, why did you hire a consulting company to come in and work with you? It was to improve your leadership.
Yeah. And
do good leaders quit after one wrong thing?
No.
What do they do? They keep finding different ways. And so I would say, have an open mind and say, okay, option A wasn't ideal. Option B, could it be better? Maybe, maybe not. So read Extreme Ownership with an open mind and just ask yourself, as you're reading Extreme Ownership, how do I connect these things to my personal and professional life?
Yeah.
Do these things apply? And I'll give the breakdown if he's listening to this, which I hope he is I would just say, do you believe that relationships are important? And then I would ask him, do building good relationships help teams win generally? Do you think communication within your organization could be a little bit better?
Yeah.
Do you think when your communication is simple, clear, and concise, it allows you to deliver a message to your team that allows them to go perform at a high level? Do you think alignment is a good thing? Do you think having the ability to detach from your emotions is a good thing? Have you ever been given too many tasks and not known what to do? Or has anybody on your team ever been given too many tasks and not known what to do? Do you think training is important? Do you think having a debrief to get alignment with your people at the end of a day or end of a work project is important? Do you think empowering people to step up and lead, to solve problems on their own is important? Do you think good leaders build other good leaders? Do you think how you communicate matters in regards to your people getting the job done when they understand what and why, and you give them ownership for creating the how? Do you think responsibility and accountability is an important thing within your organization? Do you believe that your people should have high standards for performance, and should the leaders adhere to those as well? Like, that's literally what I would just ask this guy. Right. And if he can say yes to the majority of those, in my mind, people should say yes to
all of them. Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
But my perspective is flawed, and I know that.
Sure.
However, I think those questions are pretty close to being universal to where everybody would be like, yeah. So I would just ask your friend, if he can say yes to the majority of those, then read Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
Because that's what we teach.
So I want to attack this kind of from two angles. So the one is that by no fault of your own or any of the people who are in your leadership cadre, right? I think by virtue of the organization and the type of people that you are, being most of you are veterans, extreme high performers, but even those who aren't veterans are extreme high performers. Jamie Cochran is an unbelievable.
She's amazing.
Performer. You look at
Meg Miller, Corey.
Yeah, I was going to say Meg Miller.
Danny
is the name.
Ziem.
Yeah, whose name was escaping. Meg Miller she's got an unbelievable resume. Is just totally bad to the bone.
Yes.
Danny's pretty okay.
I mean,
but like all these people have these really not just impressive resumes, but they've accomplished a lot, and so they get a lot of respect as sort of outside influences because of the things that they have been able to do.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of leaders, myself included, when we find ourselves, especially across the table from somebody who's in middle management that's coming with a complaint, that if I were to say, and this is, I'll say this from experience, that if I were to ask, maybe not this person, but a lot of folks that I've worked with in the past, hey, do you think your ego's involved in this? Absolutely not. You don't think this is your ego at all? No. I guarantee you this stuff isn't going to work. And so they kind of double down on the fact that, yes, it is their ego, by saying no, that it can't be. That's kind of one of those indicators of like, all right, well now if it wasn't before, now it definitely is your ego, right? And then that. So how do we help them come to the realization that there is another way? And then whenever you finish this, I'll give my my kind of part two of this question.
So to show them that there is another way, I think I would just go down that same question matrix that I asked. Is, I would just, if I asked you, I'm like, hey, do you think your ego's involved? You're like, no, not at all. I'm like, okay, that's impressive, because to be honest, Lucas, my ego gets in the way a lot of the time. Yeah. And it's actually one of the things I've been working on. So tell me about your relationship with these people. What was it like? And you're like, well, bad, because I didn't like them. Well, why didn't you like them?
Because they suck.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so I'm going to start asking questions to get you to hopefully see your involvement in this. And it's a slow process. And the other thing is, it might not be the right time to talk about it, because if you're all fired up about it and you already have the strong opinion, I'm not converting you.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to be like, hey, man, I'm sorry you had a really bad experience with those people. Actually, from what I've experienced before in the past, is they actually put out some really good content from what I've learned. But, hey, you know what? Not your cup of tea. I respect that. You're a good leader, and I know that you're wanting to be a good leader. Are there any other companies out there that you know of that provide good leadership training? And then I'm just going to sit and listen to what you have to say. And then I'm going to say, oh, cool. I like boom, 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 boom. Let's, hey, do you think it's fair for us to, look into a few other companies? I have a few on my mind, and you have a few of yours. So let's look at your list and my list and see which ones align best with how we want to lead as an organization, and, availability and pricing and, just the general message. I think you and I both align with the fact that we want our team to win. And so let's find the best option that allows our team to perform at a high level. And if you'll be intentional about checking your ego on this, I'll try to do the same thing.
I like that.
Yeah, and then, somewhere in there you throw in like, hey, I could use your help on this.
Right.
And then you tie it into that, because now you're like, oh, I'm helping.
Yep. That's that giving ownership, right?
100%.
Yeah. When the team comes up with a plan, that they own it a lot more.
Yep.
So one of the things Jamie Cochran talks about, and I heard her talk about this after I had kind of come around on Echelon Front and on extreme ownership in particular. When you guys give your lessons, they don't necessarily, well, first let me start with, Task Unit Bruiser was incredibly successful in Ramadi in accomplishing the mission that was set before them, and handed over to the units that went to replace you a battle plan for victory that was unprecedented for what the prognostications or whatever you guys were first deployed. That you went into something saying that, when everybody said that this was going to be just a total loss of a situation, and the leadership worked well together, the plan that you guys put in place allowed that to be one of the most successful areas of the Iraqi war, and it's just unbelievable what y'all did. Mm-hmm. The reason I'm prefacing it with that is because so much of what I think we hear, especially when it's former military people, is you need to be disciplined, you need to get your act together, get off the freaking couch, or whatever expletive you want to throw in there, and like, this is it, just and that was one of my apprehensions whenever I first heard about Jocko and about extreme ownership. Is I was like, I don't need somebody else telling me that that I suck and that I need to get better, right? If I want to do that, I'll just watch Full Metal Jacket, and I'll grab my garden hose and golf balls and just try to get after it. So the thing that I found, though, and this is what Jamie Cochran highlighted, because I couldn't find a really good way to put it in its words, And she said, when she read the manuscript of the book that Leif and Jocko gave her, because she got one of the very first copies of it before it went to print to kind of look over it.
Yeah.
Is that the majority of the lessons that you guys teach? It's not hey, this was the awesome thing that we did. It was, hey, this is something that we did that almost got a bunch of people killed.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that we did that we nearly failed on. This was a failure that we had to correct from here on out. And so these aren't like lessons about like how great and how awesome we were as, the world's greatest fighting force, the Navy SEALs. It was
kidding. There I was.
Yeah. Right.
Knee deep in hand grenade pins. And you're like, what?
Yeah. No, this is one of those, hey, yeah, here's lessons from one of the world's most elite fighting force of how we almost found ourselves in disastrous situations.
Yep.
And the lessons that were learned from that. So I think this idea of coming from a place of humility is one that is pretty impressive. And that was, my answer to him. I was like, well, the guys in Echelon Front, extreme ownership and those kinds of things, these are lessons that these guys learned from failing in ways that were almost fatal to the people that were around him, which speaks to, the most important thing about a good leader is humility. When you are teaching these things, in particular, the laws of combat, because a lot of those messages or a lot of those lessons do come from failure or near failure for y'all. How difficult is it, and maybe it was the first few times and isn't anymore, how difficult is it to talk about some of those situations without like reliving all of the emotion that's in them and the tension and stuff from where things were, or maybe how necessary is it to channel that whenever you're talking about it in order to convey the point that you're trying to?
I would say it's probably a hybrid that flows back and forth. There are times that it's super emotional when you think about the mistakes that you made and how you guys got injured and it could have been a lot worse. And then there's other times where it's just matter of fact. It's like, hey guys, man, we made all these mistakes. Here's where we got very lucky. We don't operate in luck, so let's figure out how we don't do that again.
Right.
Here's what we learned from it. Here's what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Here's how you correct it. Here's what we did to correct it. Here's what you should probably think about doing to correct it. Here's how you change up these habits, tendencies, behaviors, right? You create habits, you change habits to create new behaviors and tendencies. And so there are times where you just understand, like, hey, this is something we got to talk about, address, and work through. And then it's just that frame of mind, you're going in there to do the work. And there's other times that you're doing that, but you get a little more in depth with the story. And so the details just hit a little bit harder. Yeah. And there are times that you just hold on to those words. You hold on to those memories. And the human body is a unique thing. Yeah. And sometimes it's a very emotional, draining conversation. And other times it just look like it have the same conversation and then just be on like cloud 9, level 10, fired up for life. So it's just, those things are going to happen. Don't give it too much thought and weight. That's all I would say. It's okay to feel emotions. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be disappointed and frustrated. It's okay to hurt. It's okay.
Yeah.
But we can't sit there and focus and live in those moments. We've got to find the light. We've got to find the good in what's actually happening in our lives.
I think the tendency that we have as storytellers whenever we're trying to make a point is to only talk about our successes because it's so
much cooler.
Yeah. Well, I was having this conversation with my dad. Was it the day before yesterday? So, Dad's blue collar. He's worked for a handful of companies, mostly in telecommunications, for years and years. And one of the things I was telling him is how I have changed in my perspective in the way that I tell stories. Because, like, when I was working for the Harley shop, when I was working for, Office Depot, or when I was doing stuff, in various like audit and jobs, waiting tables or whatever, throughout the years, is that the mentality that I grew up with is that the stories that we told tended to follow this same pattern and program. I had this stupid employee, or like stupid subordinate, or this stupid customer come up to me and ask, dumb question A. Yeah. And because of dumb question A, I used that as an opportunity to be sarcastic and berate them, about all of these other things. And then at the end, I showed them how stupid they were for asking dumb question A. And it's, that's kind of the thing, right? You show, it's the customer service story about how dumb the customer is, or like you came in and it's an irate customer, and then you really put them in their place, and then at the end of it, they walked out and everybody around you was giving you a standing ovation for how well you stuck that person in their place because they were a real jerk or whatever. And the truth of the matter is that those stories, which are the ones that I feel like I told most often, right, and embellished like to the nth degree in order to make me look so much more brilliant
and make the story funny,
right?
So that people laugh, because we get a dopamine hit when people laugh at our 100%. Jokes.
Yeah, all of those things that in the end, what I really did in telling my story was I made somebody else look stupid, and I made myself look like as we're keeping it PG, I made myself look like a donkey.
Oh yeah.
And then at the end, when I look back on not just the reality of what those things were, but like that my ego was so attached to that, that now the likelihood that, especially if it was a subordinate, that they're coming to me and asking me for help again, pretty low, unless they absolutely have to.
Yeah.
They would rather make a mistake and hide it versus make a mistake and fix it, because they don't want that negative interaction.
Because you failed to build a relationship.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. That's our ego. 100%.
Right.
Our ego gets in the way of all that stuff. So
yeah, and so that's why I think that the lessons from failure are much more dynamic.
Yep.
Because if we take somebody and coach them instead of and ask earnest questions, like
it's
the same thing we do with our
opportunity.
Kids. Yeah, and we don't take it.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yep. So fix it,
brother.
Folks.
Yeah.
Be more disciplined. Wake up early. What else are we supposed to just
check
say?
yourself before you wreck yourself? All right. This has been the JP Dinnell podcast, YouTube Q&A exclusive. As always, I appreciate you guys listening and supporting and sharing these things. We're trying to do more of these. We said we're going to do one per week. We might start doing more than one per week if bandwidth is available, to provide you guys just some additional perspectives. And if you find value in it, please share it. Make sure you are subscribed and hitting that follow button. Right?
Yeah, ding that bell. Make sure that you're getting notifications.
And any and all the comments that you guys have are awesome. So anytime we do a video, if you could just comment, hey, this was my takeaway, just simply, this was my takeaway on any of our YouTube videos, that would be huge.
It would be massive.
That would be a game changer.
Yep.
But anyways, we just appreciate you listening. It's an amazing opportunity that God has given us to be able to sit down, talk, think about things, and relay our thoughts and ideas to y'all. So as always, I am JP Dinnell with Lucas, and we appreciate you.